Hey, how are you? This is Jim at the Pain PT, and thanks for being here today. I have another success story which I love to bring to you guys because they're super powerful, and I'm so happy to have Darren here. Darren, how are you doing today?
Doing well. Happy to be on this side.
Yeah. We just said we off air. We hadn't spoken in a while. We looked it up. It was mid-March of last year, so it's been coming full circle about a year and a few months. So I'm really excited to hear your story because we were talking here, we're working through some stuff, and I'm gonna let you take over and just start wherever you want with your story, and we'll listen to it, and you can give the viewers a good overview of what happened to you and how you got out of it.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks. I mean, and like a little preamble, like the sort of my motivation for reaching out was one, I'm just doing great now. I'm back to lifting weights. I'm back to doing like everything. I won't bury the lead, right? I'm doing really well. And the in the chronic pain community, I think a lot of people like they get better and then you just go live your life. and it seems it's this helped me so much to hear success stories. So, if one person hears this and is inspired to uh, try this and give it another go, then it's time well spent. Um, so yeah, my I was in I was getting to the end of graduate school. I was in my last semester of graduate school and playing a lot of guitar. And I got like this. I started like this little like hinge, like a little nerve thing, like in the arm there. And I was like, oh, that's a little weird. It's a little weird. And so, so maybe I'm playing too much tennis. I stopped the tennis. Maybe I'm playing too much guitar. I stopped the guitar. Maybe it's the weight lifting. Maybe I need to stop lifting weights. So I like slowly started like removing the more extreme activities from my life. And guitar was one of the last things to go because I loved it. Was such a stress reliever. I loved it. And but it got to the point where I couldn't do it. And so it just sort of started like this sensation of growing sense. It was just like constant sense of swelling in the armpit there, and it was just on the left side, and this was right in the Great Recession. This was 2009. I didn't tie those things together until much later in my story. But so yeah, job prospects were minimal. Nobody's hiring. Super stressed out, and I'm drinking like a fish. Like I'm just not taking good care of myself. Um, but I wind up. I was in Minnesota. I go to Baltimore with my partner at the time because she got a job out here in Baltimore, and things just started escalating. It just got more and more intense. All of a sudden, now it was in the right arm. This was again, it just felt like I had like a golf ball in my
Mm.
armpit. I was like just chronically uncomfortable. Just could not move. Could not find a position that was comfortable. It was so debilitating. Um, so I started going to physical therapy, and they're like, we don't know what's going on. And eventually, someone sent me for X-rays, and they said, "Oh, you have like a cervical rib or something, like an extra rib there." And they said, you should go. Maybe it's thoracic outlet syndrome, which is like a compression of the nerves up in the um, neck and down into the arm. And there, I was like so relieved. I was like, "Oh, thank God!" It's like I got a diagnosis. It's not like this, um, it's not this giant mystery anymore because it's like practitioners and healthcare workers, they're just like, they don't know what to do. They're like, I don't know what to do with you. It's like, I don't know. So I get the diagnosis and I go see a surgeon over here at Hopkins. They're like, yep, thoracic outlet syndrome, no problem. We'll go in, we'll remove that rib and we'll snip those muscles and you should be right as rain. And so I went through that surgery, super intense surgery, like removing a rib, snipping the scalene muscles. I mean, it's very intense. The recovery is takes very long. Um, and then going in for my checkup and just feeling like, hey, feeling better? Not at all. Not at all. I think some of the swelling, like I had some like um, forearm, like my forearm muscles would get really tight. I think like some of that got better from the surgery, but all that sensation, all that sort of golf ball in
Still
the
there.
armpit still there. And just like, oh man. So at this point, I'm like 2 years, 2.5 years into this. So it's like 2011. Um, so I'm frustrated. I'm angry. I go to so I'm like, hey, I need a second opinion. So I go to another surgeon. And he says, he looks at my x-rays and looks at the chart. He says, oh no, he's like, you see what happened? She didn't get the root of the rib. She just she took part of the rib out, but not the whole thing. He's like, I'm gonna go in there, I'm gonna get it from the root or whatever, and you're gonna be great. I have a 99% success rate. I'm like, great. Who doesn't love that? Um, so I did the surgery with him, and it's just brutal. Like that's like a huge scar here to this day.
So you got
Um,
one surgery on one side, on
mhm.
the other side.
Yeah, and then the second surgery, and it was just like a hack job. I don't want to trigger anyone, but it was
Mhm.
really really bad. The recovery was tremendously painful and long. And again, going back to his office for the post op, like, oh, you feeling like how you feeling now? Like worse now than when I started. And oh, huh, all right, and then that's it. Like that's the tool at their disposal. There's no.
They just
He's like,
said,
well,
bye bye. We can't do anything more for you. They didn't give you
mhm.
any indication at that point. Neither of them gave you any indication that there was something else possibly.
No, no. It was just you're gonna. And even after the first surgery, they're like, well, it could take up to a year to experience like symptom relief. And I'm like, that's weird. That's just a long time.
The body doesn't
Um,
take a year to heal for most
yeah.
cases.
So. And at this end, I'm doing all the physical therapy that comes with, surgical rehab, and this, that's really intense. Um, and and I sort of, would give up at various points, and like, oh, you're just fatigued. You're just constantly. I'm not able to do the things I enjoy, and I'd have these spurts of like, screw it. I'm just gonna do it. Like I'm just gonna play guitar. I'm just gonna go play tennis, and I would do these things, and the blowback would be just tremendous. Like they would just lay me out, and so I constantly had to evaluate like, hey, is this activity worth the repercussions that I know it's going to cause? And that so it dictated my life in so many ways. Like, oh, I can't wear a backpack for an extended amount of time, can't carry anything heavy. It starts to really just affect, and as a man too, like just physical strength is important, and to not have that was, I think, pretty demoralizing. Um, so I'm kind of navigating at this point, but I'm just trying everything. I'm just obsessed. Like you Google on my computer, if I Google thoracic outlet syndrome, all the links were purple. They've all been visited for pages and pages and pages. Just chronic, incessant research of like looking for
Mm.
some tip. Like, is it a brace that I was wearing? I've worn a brace. I've, gotten injections. I've done every kind of therapy, postural therapy, every, alignment sort of thing you can do, chiropractor, stuff in the pool. And yeah, I mean, all of it just aggravated it. And I have these moments of like, there's kind of this spike of, hey, there's a new treatment, really excited, starting to feel pretty good
Get
about
the
it.
hope going.
It gets the hope going, and I would go to like one session. I'd be like, actually, I think this might actually help, and that would last for like 24 to 48 hours, and then it would just be like a rebound, and it would be worse off, and then I was back to square one. So
Yeah.
it was pretty frustrating.
I always say the hope doesn't get you to the finish line. It gives you a little, it's a fleeting sense of okay, right? And then
Yeah,
I'm crashing back a lot of times.
yeah, yeah. And so I just kept doing that. I mean, at this point, I'm like recycling treatments, right? I've done the same thing before. I'm going to see another physical therapist. Because I feel like I have to do something. I have to do something to fix the issue. And I'm like, I'm not flexible at all. So like clearly that's what's going on. There's just too much tension and I don't have the flexibility I need. Um, Anyways, that keeps going on. I did come across, I don't remember how it happened. Somehow I came across, oh, Howard Stern. I was listening to Howard Stern. He's a big Dr. Sarno
Right.
guy. And so that planted the seed. I was like, I'll check out this book. And I remember reading it, and this at this point I'm like 6 or 7 years into this chronic pain journey. And getting like a little bit of hope and like, oh, just go live your life. Great. Awesome. And again, that lasted like 2 weeks. And then I was like, I should, you know, uh, maybe I can do this and I'll do the physical stuff too. I'll go see a physical therapist. Um, I am at, I mean, I'll cut to like year 8 or 9 or 10. I don't even know exactly when, but I,
And at this time, at 8, year 9 and 10, I'm trying to remember when we worked, you were doing very little, right? You were not doing much at all. Like you said, you do these little bursts and stop. So your activity levels were quite low at that point.
yeah, I would go for, I could run. And that was my thing. It was very painful. It was very uncomfortable, but that was like my one outlet. Um, but just chronically stressed, lots of, and lots of insomnia, lots of, like, I had a lot of weight loss. I was down to, I'm 6'1". I was down to like 150 something, which is too light. Um, So I get, and then I'm this physical trainer, physical therapist is like, oh, you should try this new thing. It's called neurotherapy, and I'm like, I'm like, sure, that sounds great. I dished out like buku bucks for this therapy where it's basically physical therapy. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but they take
I've heard of
basically
it.
they take a tens unit and like put it on like various areas, and then you do like functional mobility moves
Mhm.
while they just like crank up the voltage on the tens
But
unit.
basically electrocute you while you're
They're basically electrocuting me. It's awful, and it's like it's the sort of this no pain no gain. We're gonna like, and there's all this talk about because once you have these surgeries, then you go back to the physical therapist, and they're like, I'm like, oh, what's going on? Oh, well, you're not progressing, but it's probably because scar tissue from the surgery, and like this idea of like these ideas of scar tissue kept coming up, and that's what the like shock, basically shock therapy was supposed to address, right? It was supposed to like
and I
break
remember
down.
telling people the same thing that, I think kick myself now, apologize for all these people out there. And you know any better, it's what we learned from school.
From a PT, from your PT background, yeah. Um, so yeah, it was that, and then it was the I'm blanking on the word, like the thin layer that's like underneath your
Fascia.
skin, your fascia, your fat, oh, your fascias. We got to loosen your fascia, and Um, so anyway, that was like just tremendously painful, and I drove like uh, almost an hour each way to do that for like a month, an hour there, hour back every morning. Ate what I was supposed to eat, drank all the water I was supposed to drink, documented my pain levels throughout the day, and it was just an everyday thing. And $10,000 later, I'm way worse off than I
Mm.
was before. Now I'm just cry. I can barely move without being uncomfortable. So that was definitely a rock bottom and put me back into the hey, maybe there's something physical going on. So I find someone to do surgery on me again, and they go in and they said, oh, maybe it's the pec, maybe the pec minor is pressing on the nerve. So they went in. I got a bilateral um, pec minor release. Basically, they just snip the muscle. Um, and again, no improvement. They send me home with a, uh giant thing of muscle relaxers, and best of luck. Do your physical therapy. Um, and I don't know.
4 surgeries at this point. You've had 4 different surgeries. Unbelievable.
Yeah, yeah, not, and that's not including the injections, like the
Yeah.
prolotherapy. If you're familiar with that, where
Right.
they like inject like saline and stuff in there. Um, so at this point I'm pretty despondent. I'm like, this is just my life. I'm in a stressful job that I'm not loving. And I went on vacation I went down to it was during the election of 2020 maybe. And went with my then girlfriend, now wife, and we came back and it was like Sunday. I'm like, I feel terrible. Now I got to do this. I got to go to work tomorrow. Like, how am I going to even do this? And I got out Spotify and I typed in chronic pain or something, which I was looking for something. And Nicole Sachs's podcast came on, the Cure for Chronic Pain. And like that just blew my mind, right? It was uh, like, oh my God, this is amazing. And she's very in line with Sarno. And I just binged those episodes and um, even had a few people on there on her podcast that talked about thoracic outlet syndrome, which was very like connected. And now I know the actual symptoms are kind of secondary to the other things, but it was, I mean, you couldn't have told me otherwise, right? I wanted to hear someone that had my exact symptoms, my exact story, and got better so that I could do exactly what they did. And but it was, yeah, it was great. Listen, like that connected me into that world again. And uh, I also went to another physician that there was a physician at Hopkins who wouldn't uh, do surgery on me when I was like calling around, like, hey, is there anything like maybe? Because I was, hey, maybe is it Peck Minor syndrome? And he's like, I wouldn't do surgery on you. He's like, I'm going to treat you like you were my brother. I don't think you have what you think you have.
Mm.
And he didn't say anything about mind body stuff, but he basically said like if you keep looking around, if you keep going to surgeons, you're going to have surgery and you're going to wind up with a spinal stimulator and and you're going to wind up in on disability. He didn't have a solution. He basically just said
At
like,
least he came in and kind of put that in your mind to stop. Hey, this you're going down the
yeah,
wrong path.
yeah, yeah. He encouraged me to pause. And so, but I was like, okay, thank you. And when I went and got the surgery done with somebody else. And so I came back to this guy. Yeah, so I went back to that guy and he kind of reiterated, I don't think you have what you think you have. And he didn't do any of the tests and all. He didn't do all like I can tell just from looking at you. I know if I can see from your history. Um, uh, so he kind of knew what was going on. Um, so I think it might have been on the Nicole Sachs podcast. There's some promotion for Curable, and so I downloaded the Curable app. That was great, and then getting involved with the Curable group was was really really great. It's like a 12-week cohort of people you go through, and it just felt nice to be connected with other people that could really relate because it's very
Absolutely.
isolating. It's so hard to nobody can relate. People feel bad. They're like, sucks. Yeah, I guess my back hurts sometimes too, and I'm like, not like this, man.
It's not the
Not
same.
like this. Yeah. So you got some camaraderie there. That was really helpful. And yeah, and I started listening to success stories. Um, and you hear a lot of people. That's one of the issues with the Sarno book was you hear so many people. I just read. I mean, go to Amazon. Like, I feel like 90% of the people, 90% of the reviews on there, are like read the book, haven't had pain since, and so that didn't happen to me at all.
Yeah, those
Uh,
book cures are always they're amazing to read, right? But they don't make us feel good when we're in a recovery for a while, right? We've been doing the work and we're like, oh my God, it's not working. But I always tell people like the book cures, that's what you see, but there's a lot of people, as you know, that it takes much more time to get better.
yeah, and I don't know, and I think a lot of those book cures are probably temporary if you're not
Exactly.
addressing the underlying things. So that's when like recovery started, and it wasn't easy. I mean, it's been like the hardest thing I've ever done. But just staying like, switching to like what worked for me. One was getting off the support groups. I was in all the thoracic outlet syndrome like support groups, I mean, very medicalized, very like doom and gloom. Yeah, not supportive at all. So getting out of those was super helpful. Stopping the physical therapy, stopping all the physical treatments. Um,
Which is a
that
big
was
deal, right? At the time for people to to give that up, right? That's like a lifeline for people.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, but you don't realize, I mean, how much time and energy goes into that and money until you
sure.
stop doing it. It's so you feel like you just have to do it to maintain. Um, but yeah, it's a cold feeling when you realize like I'm doing all this to not get any better. Like it was almost like I felt like I was doing that to not get worse, when really
Right.
it was just keeping me where I was.
Right.
Um,
Keeping you stuck in a way.
yeah. So yeah, I like I'll say the physical stuff was the hardest thing to do, and that's where you really came in and um, swooped in and worked your magic when we connected. Because I think people talk about in the TMS community. It's a lot of like psychologists and kind of helping professionals who don't necessarily have a good sense of like you know anatomy and physiology. So I think there's a little bit of hesitation of like, hey, just go for it and do it, and your body will be fine. But meaning with your background, it helped to have that uh, anatomical knowledge. So I feel like because again, I mean, I spouted all the same bullshit that I spouted to everyone else, but they had to like kind of think it through or didn't know if it was true, or you could say that's just not a thing. That's not what's going on. And yeah, and the for me, like the graded motor exposure was key, right? Because like I said, I would have these like, screw it, I'm just gonna go,
Right.
I'm just gonna do 20 push-ups,
Boom and
and then I
bust cycle. Yeah, you got into
yeah,
that boom and then you bust. I remember we started with just real simple, right? I remember you got that little boxing thing from your. Maybe
yeah,
tell people about that. I thought that was good because it was about that some anger expression too, right? That we were talking.
yeah. We talked a little about the egg. So the graded motor, I'll tell you how I did it. I Because push-ups were my thing. Even doing a plank or anything was just like, just horrible. So my plan was one push-up 2 times a week. That's it. I'm just gonna do one push-up and that's it. And next week I would do two push-ups 2 times a week. That's it. And I would just work. That was my plan. I would work my way up, and it's the stress that was associated with that, and we had talked a lot about kind of healthy outlets for anger, and so I was doing this. I listened to like death metal and like shadow box for like 30 seconds just to kind of like loosen up, and I'm like working myself to do my one push up, right? I kind of like
Right.
drag it, come on. Then I would do the push up, and then I would like meditate afterwards for like 5 minutes of just like calming down
Yeah.
and being okay. And I was able to stick with that. I think at about week 4, when I was doing 4 push-ups, I had like a really bad flare up that prevented me. So I think that slowed me down from like between weeks 4 and 5. But I was like, I'm just gonna push through this. And I remember, I mean, uh, doing this push-up thing every morning when my alarm would go off and I'd reach for my phone, my shoulder would go, like my shoulder hurt. It was like, and before that would have been like, hey, I've done too much. Gotta back off, gotta go back to square one. But this time I was like, I can't do that. I gotta keep moving forward. And I like, I'm like, I can slow down, but I can't stop, right? I can
Right.
pace myself,
Pause,
but there's
pause,
no
but
going
then
back.
stop. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that week when I did 4, I was like, I'm not gonna do 5 because I'm killing myself here. My shoulder really hurts, but I'll do 4 again, and I'll just keep doing 4 until I'm able to do 5. And so this is a long process. I mean, I worked my way up to this was a 14-week process of
Yeah.
working my way up to 14 push-ups before I started really feeling like now I can just drop down and do push-ups. I have the adjustable Bowflex weights, and I can work out till my to my heart's content. But it was a slow
Yeah. And
process.
maybe let the listeners know, and this is important, that instead of just diving in, I'm just going to go for it, right? Because the inclination is I just want to get back to everything again, right? Because it's frustrating to go slow. I know people say that, but you it sound like you had set up, we talked about it, you set up a nice plan of action. And the key was you executed it, you carried it out, and right, and you had kickbacks. You there was moments, I'm sure, of doubt, right? But you
Yeah.
continued to work through it, and you had symptoms too. So it's important people know that you weren't symptom free as you were working your way back.
Not at all. Not at all. It was very painful. And I remember one of the success stories I saw. Some of them you're like, oh, they're like, yeah, it was like a month, 2 months, maybe 5 months at the most when people are talking about their journey. And there was a woman, she had like chronic foot pain. And she said, I got 1% better every week for 2 years. And
Yep.
that's how, and I was like, okay, so that was sort of the longest I had ever heard, and so I'm like, okay, that's my timeline. I'll do this for 2 years. I'll stay on this path, and if after 2 years I don't feel any better, or I'm way worse, then we'll reevaluate. And I mean, hey, I mean, when did I send this message to you? I'd
It
say
was
it
over
was,
since we last spoke, it was over a year or so since that time. And you had started doing the program and you had started to say, I'm going to work this thing, I'm going to keep going. So it'd
yeah,
been some time. So yeah, 2 years. I mean, it sounds like a long
2 years,
time. 3 years.
coming almost three, almost yeah, so 2.5 years of like focused recovery.
Yeah, it's so good for you to say that. I mean, and people don't maybe want to hear that, but that is the truth. Where, and a lot of my recovery stories are people like that, where it's like it is a couple of years, it is a year. I always say give it a year, and then usually people start to get a little bit of traction, but there's still a little bit to go. So it can be 2 years, even 3 years. I've seen it even a little more than that, five
Yeah,
years. But the idea is that you were incrementally progressing, like you said, 1% a week. You were doing a little better than that,
yeah,
but you were progressing over that time.
yeah.
Once you got on the right track. Yeah.
Once I got on the right track, just eliminating the stuff that was, you know, kind of eliminating the bad stuff, or the sort of medicalized stuff. And what's been great is just having all these new insights to know what's going on with my body. And because I mean, like everyone talks about, like if it's not working in your, in a particular area of your body, it'll go somewhere else. It'll try to, uh,
Correct.
it'll move around, and that happened to me. I had some like major ear, like my ears would get full, like a sense of like I couldn't hear. It was like I was underwater,
Mhm.
and I was like, oh, it's been tremendously uncomfortable. So like I'm doing a little better with the shoulder stuff, but now this stuff, and oh man, I
Right.
can't
Pretty
handle both.
classic, the symptom imperative. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the word. And so I was like, well, there's no, I'm not anti medical establishment. I'm like, well, I should get this looked at. It is a new thing. And so I went to a doctor, and he's like, yeah, he's like, well, it probably has something to do with your jaw. So he's like, I'd recommend like a soft food diet for the next 3 to 4 weeks. And like before I would have been like, okay, let's map this out and like hit the grocery store and and do this. But I was just like, that's really inconvenient. I was like, I'm not going to do a soft food diet for three to
Yeah.
four weeks because I was already tying some of this to stress. Like it would happen if I was
Right.
doing these weekly status updates with a really senior person at my job, and it would happen like before these status updates. And so,
Correct.
yeah, I know what you are. And I was able to have a conversation with a doctor that was so empowered, right? I wasn't just a patient that was there to blindly follow orders from some, medical guru. It was a conversation of like, what role might stress be playing in this? Like, oh yeah, actually, I mean, stress can definitely contribute. I'm like, so is there any like danger? Is there any like real danger to this that I should? No, no. He's like, if it continues to get way worse, you know, then come back and we'll talk. Um, but it's yeah, it's just great to be.
So he actually kind of, you were able to speak that out and he kind of affirmed it in some way, which gave you,
Mhm.
kept the green light to say, okay, let's keep working from this angle.
Yeah, yeah, because I think it's so common to. I've talked about this with other people. This idea of wanting to be saved, right? This idea like
Yeah.
the as we think about like the modalities and things that I've done both in healing and when I was, at my worst, it was the difference between active and passive, right? I was all about the passive things. Like put me under, cut me open, put me on the massage table, all these like passive things that I'd be involved with, and that was sort of a transition for me where I was like, I'll do stuff, but it's got to be active, right? I'll do yoga, or I'll go for a run, or journaling, or things like that. Things where I'm empowered, not just laying there like a fish.
Yeah, maybe as you're sharing the story, maybe let the listeners know how you, for yourself, work with some of the stress piece. You made some connections to your life, and we talked a little bit about that. I know you did a few other things. How did you work with the stress piece of it for you in relation to symptoms?
Yeah, I feel like I have the same amount of stress. I mean, I have just different stress now. We have like a baby on the way. I'm married. So there's like relationship stress and just transition stress. And I started my own business, and that's another thing of
Right.
like
I remember that.
taking the initiative. Like I'm in pain, but I was so confident that I was going to get over this. I was like, I'm going to act in a way that assumes I'm going to get better. Like I'm
So
going to step away
that's
from
a big piece, what you just said. I want to highlight that because we even off the air when we first said to you, you said, I wanted to be a success story. So that expectation, one of the videos I just did last video was about expectations that you're going to be okay, that you're 100% okay and you're going to be okay. So
yeah,
that determination is real, just so people know. Like it sounds like you had that in you or you had that desire,
yeah,
determination, right?
yeah, yeah. I mean, I was acting as if
As if you're
I'm.
normal
Yeah,
and
what
you're
would I
fine.
do if nothing was wrong? Because I think there is a lot. You know, no no shade on the TMS community, but sometimes there's just like, oh, you need to be journaling. You need to be like
Mhm.
constant messages of safety. You need to stimulate your vagus nerve, and you can almost get into this quasi medical state. Um,
Right around this stuff.
that's
You're
good.
right. You're exactly right.
Yeah.
You can.
And so, like,
All
what
good.
would I? And so if I'm actually, when you're actually safe, you're not repeating to yourself, I'm safe, I'm safe, I'm safe.
Right. I
You're
think I
just,
said this part too, right? There's no need to say that, right? If you're
yeah,
not in danger and you know that. So yeah, so you really embodied that, living as if you were fine, expecting yourself to be fine. I think that's so powerful. I recall the story of a lady who had stage 4 cancer, liver cancer, and that was what she said. She had her chemo, but they expect her to live for a few months. But she said, I got up every day and I acted and behaved as if I was fine and normal and try to go about my day with that sort of way of thinking, and believing and being.
yeah,
Yeah, it's
yeah.
powerful.
It's super powerful, and I do. My wife gets annoyed with me because she'll have like she gets stomach aches and stuff, and she's like, don't say it's TMS, don't say it's TMS. I don't want to hear it. And
You
but she
can't you
knows.
can't treat your spouse. That's one thing I've learned. It doesn't work
No,
together.
she's been converted though. She's like she understands uh, she's on board mostly because she's seen what's happened with me,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
I'm sort of living proof of this stuff, and I do feel and you're in this space of trying to just be there for people. It's so hard. I mean, it's so. I think I shared like I wasn't actively suicidal, but I was not anti that. I was like, if it happened, I was like, that'd be a nice little break from these
right.
ceaseless symptoms.
Yeah,
Um, it gets pretty dark. So I guess if anyone's listening, the like there is hope, and I think community is so key, right? Just who you surround yourself with is just critically important. And there's nothing you can't come back from, right? I mean, I had like major surgeries. I'm covered in scars, and
yeah. That just show you think about that. Major surgeries that remove muscles, remove bone, and here you are pain free. Now, after removal of all these other things, and now you're pain free. So it's amazing that the body is really quite resilient. And right, it just shows you that you don't need to have some of these things. You don't, and you're fine.
Mhm. Yeah, because I mean, you hear about people that are in car accidents and get all mangled up, and they're not necessarily experiencing pain, right? The body heals, and even so, if you've had surgery, if you've had like targeted, uh, anesthetized by a professional trauma to your body, uh, that's, it's not as bad as a, you know, crazy car accident or anything else. And neither one of those situations automatically result in pain. But we don't know. We live in a like um, a medicalized system that just is more than happy because everyone I went to was more than like, was more than happy to try out their modality to fix me. Right? Everyone was super confident. Everyone was, um, oh, this is it. You're in the right place. All right, here we go. We're gonna do it. And they've good intentions, but it's like it was up to me. It was up to me to actually do the work, and I could work and partner with folks like you was incredibly helpful just for the accountability when things got really hard
Yeah.
and the goals got a little cloudier. It was because sometimes you just lose track. You just want a little bit of relief, and you'll take it any way you can get it. Um, but yeah, just one foot in front of the other.
Yeah, one foot in front of the other, and like in a way that was, like you said, in your mind probably felt like something you could achieve. Like you said, that one twice a week, right? In your mind, that made it achievable, right? And then you can go and you can just keep moving forward, keep moving forward. And like you said, you had, I mean, maybe speak a little more to that because it's so important that you had symptoms, you had kickbacks, you had flare ups, and maybe you paused for a moment and you said, I'm not going to do another one this week, but you stayed what we call outcome independence. You kept moving forward independent of the symptoms, really. You didn't let them stop you like they had stopped you so many times before.
Yeah, I got I'd say I sort of attached myself to the goal and not so much like success wasn't how do I feel after I do the push-ups. Success was am I functionally able to do two push-ups?
Right.
If so, then I've achieved my goal no matter what happens physically. Um, yeah, yeah. Prior to that, my mental and emotional state was so tight. If you said, "How are you doing?" I had to immediately scan what was going on in my body, and uh, if I felt like a 3 out of 10 pain, I was doing good, and if I felt a 8 out of 10 pain, I was doing bad. And it was just it was so tied to um, my physical state. And I will say too, it's when you've had something, man, this was 13 years of chronic symptoms with no abatement, right? Like no, there never wasn't a negative sensation in my body for 13 years. And uh, you get very attached to that. Like there's this like almost like when as it started to disappear, it feels like it gets a little scary. You almost like a dry leaf in the wind, right? It's
Yeah,
almost
you
like
know, and that, and we can speak to that because that happens as part of the success of the journey.
yeah,
It's one of the stages I find as people started coming out of pain. There's this existential fear, this of that it's going to come back or like it's not there. You're looking for it, you're wondering, and so it's part of the journey because it's so different now. It's like, oh my God, this is. I talked to someone today about this where she had said 29 days of not having a migraine, and she's part of her is just like can't believe this. She's been doing the work, but part of her is like, still hope this lasts.
yeah.
At that stage, you're not quite confident completely yet. But during that time, did you have kick-ups? Did you have little flare-ups that you had to put out or you worked through, or did it kind of just settle down and stay settled down?
Oh, you mean from the like once I started like doing the push-up routine and all that?
Yeah, and you said you still have that kind of weird feeling of,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, well, certainly physically there were spikes, but I had more moments of like, hey, I'm okay as I'm sitting in a meeting, and I mean I didn't realize how much I was using it sort of as a crutch. There's a lot of secondary gain that comes with chronic symptoms where like, oh, I don't have to do things that I don't want to do. It's kind of like it's like a ripcord on my parachute. Like I can always, worst case scenario, I can always pull out the my
pull up the
shoulder
pain.
brace thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And once you remove that from your toolkit, then you have to develop new tools of like, I'm just, I'm not comfortable here, or no, I don't want to do that.
Right. Speaking your truth, speaking the emotion, right? Not letting the body speak and Right. It's a distraction. It's a secondary way around it. And you're going right to the heart and say, no, I'm not really up for this today. Or so you mentioned that too about setting some boundaries and speaking up more. It's important.
Yes, certainly yeah, boundaries are really important. And I want to say something else about that. And I think just the sense of, you know, uh, hey, I could be doing all these great, like you start to like really, really, I started to really, really romanticize what my life was like before having these symptoms. Like you would, I mean, sure, I lifted heavy weights and I played all the guitar I wanted, but you would have thought I had like this magical, oh, before the pain started, it was like just rainbows and I was never sad.
Goldilocks. Yeah.
Yeah, but the reality was my life was a. I mean, we won't even go into like childhood. It was like uh, I'm sober for just over 8 years, and so I've had like addiction issues and stuff, and really family drama, and yeah, life was not easy at all before the pain. So once the pain starts going away, you start confronting like your
Yeah.
reality against expectations. Um, because it's not, I think Nicole Sachs said it well. It's like sometimes life is a choice between what hurts and what hurts more.
Right.
It's not
Exactly.
always
You
not a
started,
choice.
right. You started moving forward, right? And that's a big part of it, coming out of that living in the past, regret, right? Remorse, wanting that versus now you're living for the future, right? You saw a path ahead, like you just used some of those words. I was, going to get there. And so when you start looking forward in that way, it can start to shift some of that stuff too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it feels good. It feels like I think on the one hand, I mean, it's nice to just not have the monkey on my back, like literally or figuratively. And also I think just the gratitude for being able to, because so many people are experiencing this stuff in one form or another. Like sometimes it's not always as serious as what I experienced, but it's you know whether it's irritable bowel syndrome or migraines. Like we we all know people who are experiencing this stuff, and just being able to be a resource for them. Not that I'm gonna go like I'm not a Dr. Sarno book thumper, but I'm available. Like I'm available to have a conversation about my experience and be a source of hope. And I think that's an amazing byproduct of this that I did not uh, anticipate looking forward to. I just couldn't really fathom it. But I will say, yeah, if you're struggling, like you're in a very unique place to to be of service to people who are earlier in their journey or just completely unaware that this approach is even a thing.
Yeah. No, well said. Well said. Yeah. Yeah. The idea of giving back, so many people, when they get through this, they can give back and from a level that not many other people can speak of because you lived it. Right. That's, I always say, your experience is the best teacher for yourself and anybody else. So it's powerful, yeah, to be able to share that. One question I did have for you, as you were getting towards the end of your journey, just for the listeners again,
Sure.
did you find that the pain just started to kind of fade out over time? It was just like a little bit of a going away. Or how did it sort of go away for you eventually? Because you were doing more of your work, you were
Honest.
outcome independent. You just kept doing your exercise, you kept doing your thing. Did it just sort of kind of go to the back of the mind, or what happened?
I don't know, because I mean, honestly, I could sit here and if I really think about it, I could like recreate that sensation. It's not associated
Sure.
with pain, but I can like still feel that I didn't change muscularly. I mean, I've much bigger muscles now because I actually work out, but I didn't like my general physiology didn't change. I mean, I think it was just the interpretation of it. It would, yeah. I remember sitting in a meeting and just having like an epiphany of like, wait, I'm not like
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. It's one of these things, and I wanted to highlight it because a lot of people, it's not like you said, this magical fix where, okay, this person's going to fix me passively. It's like this happens, like you said, where you're just moving along, you're doing your thing, and then you have this epiphany, or it's actually really not there much anymore, right? So it's kind of comes
yeah.
out of not doesn't comes out of nowhere, but it does in a way where you're not actually looking for it, but then you notice it like that, and you're like, oh, I haven't had this for a while today.
Yeah, you notice it in hindsight, and I remember hearing, I forget her name, but but anyways, it's kind of a TMS position out of Nashville, and she said she was talking to our curable group, and she was like, you won't be aware, sorry, I'm butchering it, but you won't know the moment when you get out of pain.
Exactly.
And I was like, that's of course I will. Of course I'll
Right.
notice that.
That's it. That's it. And you think about pain as a general concept of injury and stuff, it's like that, right? It fades away. And it's not that someone, let's say you sprain your ankle today. You're not going to do anything to make it go away quicker. It's just going to fade away. And before you know it, you don't think about it anymore. And like you said right in the beginning, most people don't come on because they live back to their life. Once the
Mhm.
pain's gone, it's like somehow you don't think about it. It's different now, right?
I was thinking about actually thinking about it today. I was in this a shower thought. I was kind of uh, uh, you're thinking of the analogy like when you're really sick, right? I mean, you're like snotty and coughing, or you got the flu or something. You're just like, oh, I would do anything to
Right.
get rid of this. Like, it just my life would be so great if I didn't have this flu. And then, you don't have the flu, and you don't like. How often do you reflect on
Yeah, you
like? Well, how
never
often do
give
you
it
put
right.
yeah, you don't put no flu on your gratitude list ever again, right?
Right. You have that moment, right? But then you move on quickly. And that's exactly it. So I'm glad you mentioned that point. That's what I see too in people. So like, and it's the exact opposite of wanting and needing that cure and looking so much for that cure and hoping that someone's going to fix me, right? It's just like almost the
Yeah.
opposite.
Yeah, and we didn't talk about, I know we're coming up to the end, but another strategy that was very challenging to implement was not talking about it,
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
bringing it up in conversation and learning how to navigate. Because then I mean, it's part of your identity. People, oh, how are you feeling? What's new? And yeah, just kind of taking it off the table and just saying, "No, I'm fine." Just even when you're experiencing major symptoms, to say like, "No, I'm doing fine." Like that was a really tough, like especially as with my wife, of
Mm,
'cause I'm not fine. She knows I'm not fine,
right.
but
Right.
when I
She's
say,
asking you and you're stopping yourself. Well, yeah, and that's it's so important because you're projecting that you're fine. Again, that you're projecting. And it just reminds me of a study I read that said if a caregiver is supporting you and asking about pain and monitoring your pain, wanting to help you too much, or it actually hinders your recovery. So in the same way that you expressing and talking about your pain can hinder your recovery. So yeah,
yeah.
great.
Well, she forgot. Like I remember her bringing it up, and she's like, "I don't." She's like, "I just don't think of you as someone who's like in pain or like I don't think of you as someone who's uncomfortable." And in my head, I'm just like, been uncomfortable every moment for the last 6 months. It's better. Like I feel like I'm on the journey. I'm moving in the right direction. But um, yeah, that was big. Just kind of shifting my identity away from that.
Shifting your identity. Yeah, awesome. Such a great story. It really speaks. I mean, you had a long, long period of pain and you came
Wow.
out of it and it shows you don't want to give up. You just stick with the process. And 2 years, 3 years, here you are now sharing your story. Is there anything you want to say in the end to people that are still out there working through this?
Uh, no, I mean, I'll say jump in with both feet. I see a lot of people that are like, well, I'm going to do the physical stuff. Like, I'll still go to physical therapy, or I'm still going to get my, myofascial release, but I'll also do the TMS stuff. Like, just that stuff will be there. It's not going anywhere. You can go do the myofascial release and if the TMS stuff doesn't work. But I say jump in with both feet because there's uh, half measures. I don't think get you half results in this
Yeah.
space. Does that make sense?
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, like, Sandra said, a divided mind. You're staying stuck 1 foot in one foot in the other. So I agree with that. If you could put that aside, and you already did it forever, so put it aside. Let's just focus, right? Dive into this, and then once you get
Yeah.
going, a lot of times you'll start getting traction in it. So yeah, but you're just a testament to this work. And one thing I will say too about you that I noticed that might be helpful for others is that you were real diligent, and I think that helped. You were very. Remember when we worked together, you would really focus on, okay, this is what I'm going to do. you're pretty organized with your plan, right, of action, and then you were committed to carrying it
Yeah, it was
out.
on my calendar. It was up. I mean,
It's on calendar, yeah, and then
on
that
my
that
calendar.
helps.
Do push-ups. Yeah.
There wasn't at that point the wavering anymore. There was a little bit of that, but you worked right through that. You didn't, like you said, take 2 steps back. You might pause. Okay, but let's keep going. So
Yeah.
yeah, awesome, awesome. Such cool
Yeah.
stuff. Well, thank you so much for being on here. These stories are amazing, and I'm really happy you reached out to share your story because I think it's going to help a lot of people in their recoveries as well.
Yeah, amazing. Thanks for doing what you do and showing up every day and putting out content to at least, show people what's another option that's out there.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, I'll keep doing it. It's just to spread the word. So you do the same, and we'll catch up with you later.
All right, sounds good.
Okay, I'll
Later.
see you.